Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. The Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, often referred to as the Oakland Coliseum, is a multi-purpose stadium in Oakland, California, United States, which is home to both the Oakland Athletics of Major League Baseball and the Oakland Raiders of the National Football League. It opened in 1966, and is the only remaining stadium in the United States that is shared by professional football and baseball teams. The Coliseum was also home to some games of the San Jose Earthquakes of Major League Soccer in 2008, 2009, and hosted games at the 2009 CONCACAF Gold Cup. The Oakland Alameda County Coliseum complex consists of the stadium and the neighboring Oracle Arena. The Coliseum has 6,300 club seats, 2,700 of which are available for athletics games, 143 luxury suites, 125 of which are available for athletics games, and a variable seating capacity of 47,170 for baseball, 56,057 for football, and 63,132 for soccer. In seating capacity, Oakland Coliseum is the second smallest NFL stadium, larger only than StubHub Center, the temporary home of the Los Angeles Chargers, but the eighth largest MLB stadium. On April 3, 2017 opening day, the Athletics dedicated the Coliseum's playing surface as Rickey Henderson Field in honor of MLB Hall of Famer and former Athletic Rickey Henderson. Design. The Coliseum features an underground design, where the playing surface is actually below ground level. Consequently, fans entering the stadium find themselves walking onto the main concourse of the stadium, at the top of the first level of seats. This, combined with a hill that was built around the stadium to create the upper concourse, means that only the third deck is visible from outside the park. This gives the Coliseum the illusion of being a short stadium from the outside. Planning and construction. Business and political leaders in Oakland had long been in competition with neighbor San Francisco as well as other cities in the West, and worked for Oakland and its suburbs to be recognized nationally as a viable metropolitan area with its own identity and reputation, distinct and separate from that of San Francisco. Professional sports was seen as a primary way for the East Bay to gain such recognition. As a result, the desire for a major league caliber stadium in the city of Oakland intensified during the 1950s and 1960s. By 1960, a non-profit corporation was formed to oversee the financing and development of the facility. Local real estate developer Robert T. Nahas headed this group, which later became the governing board of the Coliseum upon completion. It was Nahas' idea that the Coliseum be privately financed, with ownership transferring to the city and county upon retirement of the construction financing. Robert T. Nahas served 20 years as president of the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum Board. On the death of Nahas, the San Francisco Chronicle's Rick Del Vecchio quoted Jack Maltester, a former San Leandro mayor and Coliseum board member: "If not for Bob Nahas, there would be no Coliseum. It's really that simple." Nahas had to be a diplomat dealing with the egos of Raiders owner Al Davis, Athletics owner Charles O. Finley, and Warriors owner Franklin Milley. Preliminary architectural plans were unveiled in November 1960. And the following month a site was chosen west of the Elmhurst district of East Oakland, alongside the then recently completed Nimitz Freeway, a downtown site adjacent to Lake Merritt, and the Oakland Auditorium was also originally considered. The Port of Oakland played a key role in the East Oakland site selection. The port swapped 157-acre at the head of San Leandro Bay to the East Bay Regional Park District. in exchange for 105 acres of parkland across the freeway, which the port in turn donated to the city of Oakland as the site for the Coliseum sports complex. The Oakland Raiders of the American Football League moved to Frank Ewell Field, a makeshift stadium near downtown Oakland, in 1962, and the Coliseum was already being heralded in the local media as the Raiders' future permanent home. Baseball was also a major factor in the planning of the Coliseum. As early as the American League publicly indicated that it wished to include Oakland in its West Coast expansion plans. In American League President Joe Cronin suggested that Coliseum officials model some aspects of the new ballpark after their new Dodger Stadium, which impressed him, though these expansion plans seemed to fade by the middle of the decade. After approval from the city of Oakland as well as Alameda County by 1962, $25 million in financing was arranged. Plans were drawn for a stadium, an indoor arena and an exhibition hall in between them. The architect of record was the San Francisco office of Skidmore, Owings, and the general contractor was Guy F. Atkinson Company. Preliminary site preparation began in the summer of 1961. Construction began in the spring of 1962. The construction schedule was delayed for 2 years due to various legal issues and cost overruns. The original design of the Coliseum had to be modified slightly in order to stay on budget. It was rumored that the Cleveland Indians might leave Cleveland for a West Coast city, but the Indians ended up remaining in Cleveland. Charlie Finley, owner of the Kansas City Athletics, unhappy in Kansas City, impressed by Oakland's new stadium and personally convinced to consider Oakland by Nahas, eventually got permission after several unsuccessful attempts, and amid considerable controversy, to relocate his American League franchise to the stadium for the season. Configurations. In its baseball configuration, the Coliseum has the most foul territory of any Major League ballpark in Major League Baseball. Thus, many balls that would reach the seats in other ballparks can be caught for outs. At the Coliseum, the distance to the backstop was initially 90 feet but was reduced to 60 feet in 1969. From 1968 through 1981 and in 1995, 2 football configurations were used at the stadium during Raider preseason games, and all regular season games played while the baseball season was still going on. The field was set up from home plate to center field. Seats that were down the foul lines for baseball games became the sideline seats for football games, which started up to 120 feet away from the field. Once the season ended, the orientation was switched to north-south, i.e., the football field ran from the left field line to the right field line. Seats were moved from behind first and third base to create corners for the end zone to fit into. Temporary football bleachers were then added in front of the baseball bleachers to form the sideline on the east side, and the baseball bleachers were not sold. Raiders season ticket holders would thus have 2 season ticket locations in different parts of the stadium that roughly corresponded to the same location in relation to the field. Since stadium expansion in 1996, the field has run north-south throughout the season. Stadium name changes. For more than its first 3 decades, the stadium was known as Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. In September 1997, UMAX Technologies agreed to acquire the naming rights to the stadium. However, following a dispute, a court decision reinstated the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum name. In 1998, Network Associates agreed to pay $5.8 million over 5 years for the naming rights, and the stadium became known as Network Associates Coliseum, or alternately in marketing, and media usage as the net. Network Associates renewed the contract in 2003 for an additional 5 years at a cost of $6 million. In mid-2004, Network Associates was renamed McAfee, restoring its name from before its 1997 merger with Network General, and the stadium was renamed McAfee Coliseum accordingly. McAfee was offered a renewal of the naming contract in 2008, but it was declined. The name reverted to the pre-1997 name of Oakland Alameda County Coliseum on September 19, 2008. The stadium retained its original name until April 27, 2011. When it was renamed Overstock.com Coliseum via a 6-year $7.2 million naming rights deal with online retailer Overstock.com. The Coliseum was renamed O.Co Coliseum on June 6, 2011, after Overstock.com's marketing name. However, due to a contract dispute with the Athletics regarding the Overstock/O.Co naming rights deal, the is referred to the stadium as the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum in all official team communications and on team websites. Overstock.com opted out of the final year on the naming rights deal on April 2, 2016, and the stadium was rebranded from O.Co Coliseum to the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. The Athletics dedicated the Coliseum's playing surface Rickey Henderson Field in honor of MLB Hall of Famer and former Athletic Rickey Henderson as part of opening day on April 3, 2017. Athletics. The then new owner Lewis Wolf made the first official proposal for a new ballpark in Oakland to the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum Authority on August 12, 2005. The new stadium would have been located across 66th Avenue from the Coliseum in what is currently an industrial area north of the Coliseum. The park would have held 35,000 fans, making it the smallest park in the major leagues. Plans for the Oakland location fell through in early 2006, when several of the owners of the land proposed for the new ballpark decided not to sell. Throughout 2006, the Athletics continued to search for a ballpark site within their designated territory of Alameda County. Late in 2006, rumors began to circulate regarding a 143-acre parcel of land in Fremont, California being the new site. These rumors were confirmed by the Fremont City Council on November 8 of that year. Wolf met with the council that day to present his plan to move the to Fremont into a soon-to-be-built ballpark named Cisco Field. Wolf and Cisco Systems conducted a press conference at the San Jose-based headquarters of Cisco Systems on November 14, 2006 to confirm the deal and showcase some details of the future plan. However, on February 24, 2009, after delays and increased public opposition, the Athletics officially ended their search for a stadium site in Fremont. The Athletics later took their Cisco Field plan to a site in downtown San Jose located near SAP Center. The San Jose plan was opposed by the San Francisco Giants, whose territory San Jose is in, and on October 5, 2015, the United States Supreme Court rejected San Jose's bid on the Athletics. During that time, the city of Oakland continued to propose new ballpark ideas that ranged from a proposal to build on a waterfront site in the Jack London Square area called Victory Court, to a three-stadium proposal called Coliseum City on the Coliseum site. Both plans went nowhere. The Athletics signed a 10-year lease to stay in Oakland and at the Coliseum on July 22, 2014. The deal required that the team look into a new stadium, but only in the city limits, which made it more difficult for the Raiders to tear the Coliseum down for a football-only facility. The A's began talks with an architect on August 6, 2014 to build a baseball-only stadium at the Coliseum site, according to Wolf. Going into 2016, John J. Fisher took majority control of the team and made Dave Cavall team president and the person in charge of the stadium hunt. On September 12, 2017, it was announced that a site near Laney College and the Eastlake neighborhood had been chosen for the new ballpark, with the A's proposing to construct a 35,000-seat stadium on the site of the college's administrative buildings, which the A's would relocate to a spot of the college's choosing. The site was chosen over building at the Port of Oakland, a building on the Coliseum site. In addition, the team is proposing building housing and commercial space on an 8-acre Laney parking lot just north of the site and funneling revenue from it to Laney. The A's would also help build a garage in the area, with the idea of boosting the college's overall parking capacity. The stadium, pending approval, is planned to be opened in 2023. Raiders. Under any such replacement proposals, the Oakland Raiders would have presumably continued to play football in the Coliseum, although there were proposals for the Raiders to play at Levi's Stadium, the home of the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara, as well as rumors regarding the Raiders' possible return to Los Angeles. The Raiders proposed a 50,000-seat stadium in the same spot of the Coliseum in 2013. It would have cost $800 million, with $300 million coming from the Raiders, $200 million coming from the NFL Stadium Loan Program, and the final $300 million coming from the city. After the failure of the stadium plan, Raiders owner Mark Davis met with officials with the city of San Antonio on July 29, 2014 to discuss moving the Raiders to the city in time for the 2015 season. They would have temporarily played home games at the Alameda Dome until a new permanent stadium was built. On September 3, 2014, the city of Oakland claimed it had reached a tentative deal to build a new football stadium in Oakland, which would have resulted in the Coliseum being demolished. The claim was met with silence from the Raiders, who continued to explore San Antonio, and opposition from Alameda County. On February 19, 2015, the Raiders and the San Diego Chargers announced plans for a privately financed $1.7 billion stadium that the two teams would have built in Carson, California, upon being approved to move to the Los Angeles market. Both teams stated that they would continue to attempt to get stadiums built in the respective cities. The stadium was approved by the Carson City Council but was defeated by the NFL, who voted in favor of building Los Angeles Stadium at Hollywood Park and relocating the St. Louis Rams back to Los Angeles, with the Chargers as the second LA team. In January 2016, Mark Davis met with Las Vegas Sands owner Sheldon Adelson about building a domed stadium on the UNLV campus for the Raiders and the UNLV Rebels. After the approval of $750 million from the state of Nevada and backing from Bank of America after Adelson pulled out of the project, the Raiders submitted papers for relocation to Las Vegas in January 2017, and on March 27, 2017, the Raiders' relocation to Las Vegas was approved. The team plans to continue to play at the Coliseum through the 2019 NFL season and relocate to Las Vegas in 2020. Raiders and A's move in. The Raiders played their first game at the stadium on September 18, 1966. In 1968, the Kansas City Athletics moved to Oakland and began play at the stadium. The Athletics' first game was played on April 17, 1968. The stadium complex cost $25.5 million to build and rests on 120 acres of land. On April 17, 1968, Boog Powell hit the first Major League home run in the history of the Coliseum. On May 8 of that year, Catfish Hunter pitched the ninth perfect game in Major League history at the Coliseum. The Coliseum hosted the 1967 and 1969 AFL Championship games. Additionally, the venue had hosted the second match of the NPSL Final 1967. 1970s. From 1970 to 1972, the stadium hosted 3 college football benefit games featuring Bay Area schools versus historically black colleges. The Coliseum hosted the 1971 East-West Shrine game on January 2, 1971. In 1972, the Athletics won their first of 3 straight World Series championships, and their first since their years in Philadelphia. The awkwardness of the baseball-football conversion, as well as the low seating capacity, and that the prime seating on the east side consisted of temporary bleachers, led the Raiders to explore other stadium options. One such option was Memorial Stadium on the UC Berkeley campus. Several preseason games were played there in the early 1970s, along with one regular season game in 1973. However, in response to traffic and parking issues associated with these games, the city of Berkeley passed a professional sports events license tax, in which the city collected 10% of all gate receipts, making the staging of professional games inside the city cost prohibitive. The Raiders were granted an injunction from the city collecting the tax, arguing that the tax was a regulatory measure rather than a revenue measure, and was therefore an improper regulation on land held in trust by the regents of the University of California. However, the grant of the injunction was reversed by the California Court of Appeals, who found it to be a revenue measure, despite the fact that the city had made the measure immediately effective due to danger to the public peace, health, and safety of the city of Berkeley as a result of the holding of professional sports events there. The stadium was not well maintained for most of the late 1970s. Its condition was most noticeable during baseball season, when crowds for as games twice numbered fewer than 1,000. On April 17, 1979, only 653 fans attended the game versus the Seattle Mariners. During this time, it was popularly known as the Oakland Mausoleum. 1980s. In 1980, the Raiders won Super Bowl 15. 2 years later, the Raiders moved to Los Angeles, leaving the as the only remaining tenants of Oakland Coliseum. Only days later, Finley agreed to sell the As to Marvin Davis, who planned to move the As to Denver. However, city and county officials were not about to lose Oakland's status as a major league city in its own right, and refused to let the As out of the lease. Finley sold the team instead to the owners of San Francisco-based Levi Strauss. After the 1986 Major League Baseball season, the original scoreboards were replaced. A new American sign and indicator scoreboard and message center was installed behind the left field bleachers, while the original right field scoreboard was replaced with a manually operated out-of-town scoreboard. Between the center field flagpoles, a new Diamond Vision video screen was installed. The 1987 Major League Baseball All-Star Game was held at the stadium. From 1988 to 1990, the venue saw 3 more World Series. In 1989, the Athletics won their 4th series since moving to Oakland, sweeping the San Francisco Giants in the earthquake-interrupted Battle of the Bay Series. 1990s. In the 1990s, several major concerts were held, but these were not days on the green by definition, because they occurred at night. In July 1995, the Raiders agreed to return to Oakland, provided that Oakland Coliseum underwent renovations. In November 1995, those renovations commenced and continued through the next summer until the beginning of the 1996 football season. The new layout also had the somewhat peculiar effect of creating an inward jog in the outfield fence in left center and right center. There are now 3 distance markers instead of 1, at various points of the power alleys as indicated in the dimensions grid. The Raiders' return also heralded the creation of the Black Hole, a highly recognizable group of fans who occupy one end-zone seating during football games, along with the since-demolished Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. The stadium features the unusual configuration of laying the football field on a line from first to third base rather than laying it from home plate to center field, a parallel to one of the foul lines as with most multi-purpose facilities. Thus, a seat behind home plate for baseball is behind the 50-yard line for football. With the Miami Marlins opening their own ballpark in 2012, the stadium became the last remaining venue in the United States that hosts both a Major League Baseball and a National Football League team. 2000s. On April 2, 2006, the broadcast booth was renamed in honor of the late Bill King, a legendary Bay Area sportscaster who was the play-by-play voice of the Raiders and Warriors for 44 years. San Jose Earthquakes of Major League Soccer announced in November 2007 that they would be playing their big draw games, such as those featuring David Beckham and the Los Angeles Galaxy, at the stadium instead of their then-home Bucks Shaw Stadium in Santa Clara. Since then, the Quakes moved to their new home of Avaya Stadium and play their bigger games in nearby Stanford Stadium. Midway through the decade, the stadium established a no-re-entry policy. Each ticket can only be used once, after which a second ticket must be purchased in order to re-enter the Coliseum. 2010s. On May 9, 2010, almost 42 years to the day of Catfish Hunter's perfect game, Dallas Braden pitched the 19th perfect game in Major League history at the Coliseum. A commemorative graphic was placed on the baseball outfield wall next to Rickey Henderson's retired number on May 17, their next home game, as part of a new 10-year lease signed by the Athletics with the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum Authority in 2014. The Oakland Coliseum had a new $10 million scoreboard system installed for the start of the 2015 MLB season. Also part of the new lease, the Coliseum Authority agreed to pay $1 million a year with 5% annual increases into a fund to maintain the stadium for the 2017 Major League Baseball season. The tarp covering a large amount of the baseball configuration has been removed, increasing the capacity to over 47,000 for the first time since 1995. The tarp remains on the football-only Mount Davis. Concerts. Commencing in 1973, the stadium hosted an annual Day on the Green concert series presented by Bill Graham and his company Bill Graham Presents, which continued on into the early 1990s. Marvin Gaye made his official return to live performing and touring at the Coliseum on January 4, 1974, and the Coliseum was the basis for his 1 million-selling live album, Marvin Gaye Live. At the time, music industry executives cited the tour as a heralded event, as Gaye made a comeback to live touring nearly 4 years after the death of his late singing partner, Tammy Terrell. Led Zeppelin played what turned out to be their final North American concerts with twin shows during the 1977 North American tour. This was due to the brutal assault on Peter Grant's 11-year-old son Warren by a Bill Graham roadie, and the sudden death of Robert Plant's young son Carrick in the UK. Parliament Funkadelic recorded half the album live P-Funk Earth Tour at the Oakland Coliseum on January 21, 1977. The album was released in April of that year. The stadium played host to Amnesty International's Human Rights Now benefit concert on September 23, 1988. The show was headlined by Sting and Peter Gabriel, and also featured Bruce Springsteen and Joan Baez. Metallica and Guns N' Roses brought the Guns N' Roses Metallica Stadium Tour to the Coliseum on September 24, 1992, with Body Count as their opening act. U2 played 2 nights in June 1997 at the Oakland Coliseum as part of their Pop Mart tour. They were supported by Oasis, one of the first shows of their Be Here Now tour. The stadium played host to the Gigantour on September 8, 2006, featuring performances by Megadeth, Lamb of God, Opeth, Arch Enemy, Overkill, Into Eternity, Sanctity and The Smash Up. U2 performed during the 360 Degrees tour on June 7, 2011, with Lenny Kravitz and Moon Alice as their opening acts. The show was originally scheduled to take place on June 16, 2010, but was postponed due to Bono's emergency back surgery. On August 5, 2017, Green Day played a homecoming concert at the Coliseum. The show was part of the band's summer tour in support of their third #1 album, Revolution Radio. In popular culture, Richard Marx shot the video for Take This Heart on the baseball field of the Coliseum. The stadium was the location for the 1994 Disney movie Angels in the Outfield. Although Angel Stadium of Anaheim was where the Angels actually played, it was damaged in the 1994 Southern California earthquake. Anaheim Stadium was used for views from the outside and aerial views, while the Coliseum was used for interior shots. Baseball. In recent years, the Coliseum has been criticized as being one of the worst stadiums in baseball. Problems cited include the large amount of foul territory and the addition of Mount Davis. The former allows for more foul outs, while the latter has been criticized for ruining the ambience of the original configuration. Mount Davis. One feature of the 1996 expansion was the addition of over 10,000 seats in the upper deck that now spans the outfield in the baseball configuration, enclosing the stadium, due to the stand's height and the loss of the Oakland Hills view. As fans have derisively nicknamed the structure Mount Davis after late Raiders owner Al Davis. It has been criticized as an area which has made the Oakland Coliseum look ever more like a football stadium and not at all one for baseball. In 2006, the Athletics covered the entire third deck with a tarpaulin, reducing capacity to 34,077, the smallest capacity in MLB at the time. Even if a game was otherwise sold out, the As would not sell any seats in the area. It would remain covered except if they made the World Series. The As said that closing off the upper deck would create a more intimate environment for baseball. This drew criticism from fans, the Oakland City Council, and sports marketing analysts baffled at owner Lou Wolf's decision, with some stating that this was cover for a possible move to San Jose. There were 20,878 seats covered up by the tarp, which would otherwise have been usable for baseball. In 2017, U-Team president Dave Kaval decided to remove several sections covered by tarps. This increased capacity by 12,103 to 47,170. In February 2013, the Oakland Raiders announced that they would cover 11,000 seats in the Mount Davis section with a tarp to avoid blackouts. This reduces capacity to 53,250, by far the smallest in the NFL. Under NFL rules, the tarps have to stay in place all season long. no matter if they make the playoffs or not. Sewage. On June 16, 2013, following the game against the Seattle Mariners, the Coliseum experienced a severe sewage backup. This led to pipes leaking out puddles of sewage into the showers, offices, visitor training room, and storage areas on the clubhouse level of the stadium, all of which are 3 feet below sea level. After the game, the Bears and Mariners were forced to share the Oakland Raiders locker room, located on the stadium's second floor. According to Coliseum officials, the stadium's aging plumbing system was overtaxed after a 6-game homestand that drew close to baseball capacity crowds totaling 171,756 fans. This was not the first time sewage problems cropped up at the stadium. For instance, on one occasion, the Angels complained about E. coli in the visiting team's training room after a backup. Backups occur even when no events are taking place there. For instance, Wolf wanted to go to dinner on June 12, 2013, at one of the Coliseum's restaurants, only to find out that food service had been halted due to a sewage leak in the kitchen. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Would you like to know more?